And with that, hopefully people can now see us and we're live. Hello, everyone. We'll get started in a moment. We're, of course, 7 o'clock at night, and you can scroll back live streams. It all works, but it's nice to wait around for people for a minute or two. I know what I was going to do today, Kit, that I completely forgot. I was going to try and make an anonymous question.
Oh,
Forgot
okay.
again.
Next time.
Next time.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it's probably a good reminder. I actually used that as a good segue last time. It's a good reminder that this is a public session. It does live after this. The links are still available. We do turn off chat replay, so the messages do hide away. But we do recommend generally that it's a good idea to either use an anonymous account. It's up to you. There can be a fair bit of paranoia in the world, and as much as I don't wish that there was as much paranoia, I understand it. Cool. Do we want to get started? It's up to you.
I think it's fine. Yeah?
Yeah?
Okay.
Cool. All right, take us away. I will press button.
Great. Yes. So hello, everyone. Great that you're here. Welcome to the session of Join Your Works Council, which is run by Tech Workers Coalition together with Adyen workers. And an intro, who's this? Tech Workers Coalition is a community of people who work in tech in the Netherlands, in this case, who collaborate together to take back workplace power. Doing the session with you today is my colleague Ben. Hello. And I'm Kit. Hi. So, yeah, why are we here specifically? We are here because there is a Works Council election coming up at your company, Adyen. So congratulations on having your first Works Council. So a Works Council is one of the ways in which you, as a worker, can have direct influence at your workplace. And it might seem pure formality, but it isn't. You can actually get quite a lot done through your Works Council if you know how to use it strategically. So maybe to open the conversation, I'd like to ask, why are you here today? Are you just curious about Works Councils? Are you considering running for your Works Council in the election? Anything, you can write in the chat if you're comfortable. And there is a bit of a delay between us saying this and it being received. Yes. So we'll wait a sec.
I have a feeling we have less people today than what we did last time, but
yeah,
it's we're doing the same content again, so but it's nice.
It's fine. Yeah. So if you still want to throw in your motivations for why you're here, feel free to type it in the chat at any point. We can pick it up later on. But in any case, what we're going to focus on today is try to demystify this whole topic of Works Councils a bit. So let's start with some basics for that. So first one is, what is a Works Council? Sorry, I just noticed that Max wrote in, you're saying, hey, that you're considering running. So you want to get more info, you are in exactly the right place because that's what we're going to discuss, and great that you're considering. Yeah. So we'll start with what is a Works Council? And a Works Council is, very abstractly, it's an interface between you as the workers and the leadership at a company. So the idea is that instead of all of the workers together directly having their say in talking to the bosses, it's done through elected representatives, which are you and your coworkers. And then as an elected representative, you interact with the leadership on behalf of your coworkers, representing their interests and their views. In the Netherlands, works councils exist by virtue of the law on works councils, de Wet op de ondernemingsraden. And that law says the following. The entrepreneur is obliged, in the interest of the proper functioning of that company in all its objectives, to establish a works council for the purpose of consultation with and representation of the persons employed in the company. So, that's quite a mouthful. It sounds a bit convoluted, but basically what this just says is the entrepreneur, so the company leadership, consults with workers at the company. That's the core. And another interesting thing in this law is that it says here, it is in the interest of the proper functioning of the company to have a works council. And you can get why that is so. Because if you have such a direct exchange between the workers and the boss, that is likely to lead, or it's a foundation that can lead to more transparency and so better communication, as a result of which both the workers and the company can make better decisions. And that can in turn lead to both better working conditions for you and just overall better work being done. So having a works council is good for you as the workers, it's good for Adyen as a whole as well. Okay, so how is the works council at Adyen going to look specifically? So how it's planned now is that your works council is going to have 17 open positions. And those seats are going to be filled by an open election, which means that you are likely going to be on that works council if you get elected with a usually varied bunch of people, a group of people who may have nothing in common whatsoever other than the fact that you all care about democracy in the workplace and you think that workers should have a say in how the company is run, which is very important. Now, there are some practical rules applied. So there are these 17 seats, but it's planned to be divided over the different departments at your company. So tech, commercial, operations, and staff. They are each planned to have 4 seats. And then there'll be another wildcard seat for whoever gets the most votes in this election. Now, if you do get elected to the Works Council, at Adyen, the plan is now that you'll have this position for 3 years. And that doesn't mean that you have to do this for 3 years, because you can always step down, life can happen, maybe you move on to a different company. But if you stay at Adyen and if you want to, this position at the Works Council is yours for 3 years. And that brings me to another important point, which is layoffs protection. So while you are on the Works Council, the company isn't allowed to fire you in relation to any of the work that you're doing on the Works Council. It would be illegal for them to do so. And there are strong protections for anyone who's a candidate for running on the Works Council, who's currently on the Works Council, and even for 2 years after you've been on your Works Council. So if you do step up and if you do this work for yourself and for your coworker, you get this bit of extra protection for yourself as well. Okay, so now we are going to quiz time. So the question here is, where does the Works Council sit in the overall company hierarchy? Is that A, next to the workers? Is it B, next to the Chief Human Resource Officer? Or is it C, next to the CEO? And you can type your answer in the chat if you want to. And again, we have a bit of a lag. So I'll repeat the question again. Where does the Works Council sit in the company hierarchy? Is it A, next to the workers, B, next to the Chief Human Resources Officer, or C, next to the CEO. And we have one response which says C, next to the CEO. I think we can go to the reveal. That is correct. So organizationally, if you're on the Works Council, you and your Works Council are at the same level as the CEO because you're having this direct conversation. Okay, and now I'm going to hand over to Ben for what can you do as part of a Works Council.
Alrighty. Thank you very much, Kit. We're going to talk through a lot of information now. So it's we're going to go through a lot of key facts about what happens. But yeah, we guess you want to know more about what you can do and what you can achieve on a workers' council. By the way, Max, if at any point in time you have questions or anything specific about what you want to know about, like, hey, what's the reality like, or other questions about what you can achieve, feel free to throw it in the chat, or anyone else, of course. That would, we're more than happy to answer any questions, and we'll answer those probably a little bit later, but maybe along the way as well. So, what can you do? The short answer is that you can make a real difference to the lives of you and your colleagues. The long answer is it's already backed by a whole bunch of laws, so you get to do a lot of things in the world of what it actually in terms of the law books. A little word of warning is that all of this stuff is all going to be translated from Dutch into English, so there's probably some mistakes along the way. A lot of the feeling and intent is actually quite accurate, though. The names may vary from some of the things that you might have seen in different parts. So if you ever look online, what can a Works Council do? There might be some different words there. But let's talk about rights. In order to sort of understand what rights a Workers' Council does, we need to use some kind of visual aid, and we're going to do some building. So we're going to build up a pyramid of rights. So in general, the Works Council for any company has the right to information, or you can think about it as the right to know. In order to be able to operate as a Works Council, you need to have the knowledge and the information on the subjects that you're working on. That could mean, for example, the company wants to change the arbeidsdienst. Arbeidsdienst is the part of the company which deals with health and wellness, I guess, generally speaking. They usually are your company doctors and those sorts of things as well. And say, for example, a company wants to change it. You want to figure out what are those motivations from the business, and you can ask them directly, hey, why are we doing this? What's the raw facts and figures about why we need to change the arbeidsdienst? What's not working today? What do you expect to get out of, a new relationship with a new arbeidsdienst? What are the other avenues that you as a company have tried to try and mitigate some of those reasons that you might want to change? Some companies, I'm not saying specifically for Adyen, but some companies find that their company doctor is too lax. And it's like, well, a company doctor's perspective is to look after their patients, right? So what do you mean by too lax? And where do you get this information from? Because that seems a bit strange to have that. But yeah, you as a Works Council have a right to know. You have a right for the information to know why it's happening. A lot of the time when I used to be on a Works Council, it's like, make this make sense to me. I'm just a worker, right? Make this make sense to me. Where this right for information goes can be quite far. So say, for example, a new C-level position in the company opens up, or they want to make one specifically, then you can challenge that. It's a change of the organizational structure. And you might say, like, but why do we need it? Why now? How much does that C-level person expect to get a salary? And how did you manage to figure out what the market rate of that particular person is? Where does that investment come from in the business? Because it has to come from somewhere. So those are a lot of the really the extremes of some of this part, right? But you have the right for information, but what's the point of just having information, right? Right for advice, or right to advise, I should probably say, or the right to talk. This is one of the rights that is used fairly often, I should say, and it's usually from the business towards the Works Council. So there's certain things when a company needs to change or wants to change something where they have to go through the Works Council. Quite often, right to advice, unfortunately, goes through the fiscal reasons. In other words, restructuring, layoffs, etc., economic reasons. But it can also just be for organizational changes. So, say, for example, the company wants to set up a new business unit, a new C-level position, for example. But yeah, we can always take it from a positive way, right? Organizational change doesn't have to mean layoffs. It can mean we adapt this properly so people can continue to have jobs and do things, right? Um, the reality is that when you have a business that's got big growth surges, Adyen, I learned, is 20 years old or something. Um, Over time, that's grown up to the thousands of people that now work at Adyen. There's a lot of culture change in that business. Well, has to be, right? And the right to advise here is a ways that you can use to protect that culture of your business as well. Because hey, we need a new business unit. How are we going to ensure that our company culture, which we really love, that's got us to this point of success, how are we going to make sure that ties over into that new part of that new business unit? How are we picking our people that run those areas? Um, so yeah, when these things come in, you generally start with what's the motivations? Why are we here? How can you make this make sense to me? You usually end up with a right to advise that comes back with, we like these parts. These things are great. You should emphasize these things. These things here, they make no sense. You need to make them make sense. um, Surprisingly happens quite often, but hey, it's part of how things work. And when it's, say, for example, organizational change, you can say things such as, hey, we're expecting this whole business unit to be completely different in the next 6 months. We want to ensure that people aren't affected in their performance reviews. We think that that would be unfair. We think that it would be a change of position. Let's give people the ability to have the benefit of the doubt, for example, when it comes to the end of year reviews. Or we want to make sure that there is a catch-all after the end of year reviews to make sure that people aren't being unfairly, treated. So yeah, right to advise. It's really about making sure that there's the proper functioning of the business, right? Make it make sense to me as an employee. We go from right to advise, which is the business asking you some questions. We now go from you as the works council, you have the right for initiative, is what I heard this called last night when I was at a meetup for works councils, but also the right to propose. So this is the works council itself wants to propose something to the business. I think it's kind of an underutilized right, and I think one of the things where you can make the most power, or you can have the most power. So you might have a good idea and you might have a business case. You might want, for example, 4-day work weeks. The start of this year, there was actually a law put into place where people were allowed to request to work well, the number of hours that they want. And it's very hard for businesses to actually say no to that. So maybe you want to provide a better process for people to be able to submit this 4-day work week request. Maybe you want to try something with people with not having to do reduced pay for 4-day work weeks. I would love to see that personally. Another hot topic is 360 feedbacks for managers. Managers, for example, often are the ones that give reviews. Personally, this is entirely personal opinion. I think that a good manager should be guiding their staff in a very like one of their responsibilities is to ensure that their staff are functioning well and properly. If all of the staff members, maybe they need to do 360 feedbacks to the manager. I'm curious whether or not, I don't know if this is a thing that happens in Adyen. I want to see this more often in a lot of businesses where we start grading the managers based on what their employees are doing. The success of a manager should be the success of the employees and how those employees see the manager, right? It's also a way to protect culture. But yeah, making personally anonymous systems. When I was on a works council, there was a way to anonymously provide information about data information and tracking, which I did use. I said, hey, look, we're doing timesheeting. I want to make sure that these timesheets are used only for the purpose, which is a fiscal reason, subsidy, right? But I don't want to ever hear that it's being used in the end of year review because that's not the purpose of that data collection. And I used it. I got the right answer. I felt very comfortable after that point in time. Yeah, you can implement other policies, for example, safeguarding political speech, discussing freedoms and what's going on in the world. And a lot of companies, there's some things which can't be talked about. I don't know what the situation's like in Adyen. I know in some very large tech companies in the Netherlands, there are subjects which you are not allowed to talk about. it feels a bit weird. But hey, you can propose anything. You may think, I'm just going to suggest something. The business is going to say no. Well, they can say no, but they have to give you very solid reasons for it. And those solid reasons, if at the end of the day you're not happy with those reasons, like, oh, we can't do 4-day work week because it would be too much administration burden. And it's like, yeah, but the law, you need to follow the law, right? Um, so there's things where they just can't get around it, and you're, as a works council, allowed to challenge those things. I don't see value in it is not a valid answer. From the right to propose, we're going to go back to the business, or the entrepreneur. That's what they call it, right? The translation. Back to the works council again, the right to decide. This is where a works council can have a lot of, I want to say power, but it's not really power. This is where you, as a works council, provide a lot of protection to the staff, you and your colleagues. This is the right to decide. It says, yeah, right to endorse is another word that's used. In the company, there's lots of things that are protected here, right? Which is the company changing policies on your working conditions? This can be the office location. This can be the number of days per week that you're working from the office, I should say. Are the sick leaves policies changing? There's new pay transparency acts which are coming out, which will require businesses to define their roles a lot better. That's changing what the expectation is of what people do in their work. Also, providing that information to the business. This is a right to consent, right? This is stuff that's about transparency and other sorts of things. All of this is something that a works council will look at. From one of the original slides, changing the Arbeidsdienst here. This is also right to consent. Right to consent is very important in the perspective of you either say yes or no. And a lot of people say no, and here's the reasons. But one thing that's very, very important for right to consent, and I like to hammer on about this, is you never say yes if you do these things. When you say yes if you do these things, they all, like, every business always hears yes. And then it's up to you to go and chase. And it's just kind of not how it works. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, all of this is one of those areas of where you have a lot of power and it needs to kind of be wrangled correctly. And as a works council, you need to understand what you can do and what scope you have. And that's a very, very broad scope. This is just some examples. But as I'm saying all of this, and I've said it in the right to propose, is what happens if you are just ignored, right? Like, what's the point of this? So we go to the peak of the pyramid. This is your right to not be ignored. Imagine you've put in all of this work in the Works Council. It's a not insignificant amount of effort to read a lot of the proposals, consider them, debate together about what you think about these policies. You're not expected to be lawyers. You're not expected to be people that are deep in the law here. So it takes time. So imagine you've spent all this time, a lot of this effort. You've gone through the review cycles. What's the point if someone just says, I don't care? Well, this is when you have the right to appeal. And it's basically along the lines of, hey, are you not following the advice? Are you not following these right things to consent? Well, hey, look, you might just be one of those 13 court cases that ends before a judge every single year. Now, there's probably a lot more things that are settled than these 13 things, obviously. But yeah, the judge is the person who gets to make the decision. And you might be thinking, from an individual perspective, wait, do I have to have a lawyer then? So, well, yes, but the company pays for your lawyer in a very weird circumstance to sue themselves. And this is not to say that you should use this power, right? In terms of the proper functioning of a business, if you're getting to this extreme, this means that something's gone a bit awry along the way. The important part to emphasize here, though, is that it is protected, and there are cases that are seen by judges every year that need to go and litigate these particular kinds of problems. So yeah, that's kind of the pyramid of rights you're going to get. So let's see how those things have played out in the past, because they do play out. It's also a good example of like the things you can do. So in 2021, 2022, you have the computer manufacturer Asus said, our headquarters in Taiwan now wants to do 3-day working weeks for every single country. The Netherlands, the people that were there, they were working 2 days a week, and they enjoyed their 2 days a week. Every one of the workers said, "Hey, I feel the most productive if I'm working 2 days a week from the office. Any more than that is unnecessary, costs more time and transport, costs more time and energy, etc., etc." So ASUS put through this thing and said, "Hey, look, Global says we're going to do this." The Works Council says, "Hey, you're not allowed to do that. You actually need to send it through us. We have the right to consent on this. We have the right to endorse." ASUS says no. Works Council says, "Cool. We go to the judge." Judge shows up, goes, "Yep, this is working condition related. The Works Council, you have the right to endorse here. You need to, you actually need to go back to your Works Council and go through the process." So what happens is ASUS goes back to the Works Council. They come up with a proposal for the Netherlands, and they say, "We want you to do this." Works Council eventually says, "No, you actually haven't made it make sense. That's the most important part here. Why do we need to do this? Because global says so." That's not a reason. There is no such thing as a global mandate that applies to a company in the Netherlands. You're on a Dutch company BV that works with Dutch company people that are employed for that BV. If you have a global company, that's congratulations, very good for you, very nice, but the rules just don't apply globally. Yeah, things you can do. We go to stuff that's maybe a little bit more in people's minds of like things that are local. Booking.com, big company in the Netherlands. They have done a number of different things over the years. They've saved 200 jobs during restructuring rounds. So those 200 jobs would not exist otherwise. They couldn't make the layoffs or the restructuring make sense. Even in this modern day and age, like the hot topic is AI. Can AI replace jobs? Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's try it. Let's try and see if these things work. And if it doesn't work, let's not restructure people. Let's measure the results. And a lot of the times when people actually measure the results, they find out that these things don't actually save time. You just have, it doesn't always make sense. I'm not saying that this restructure was about AI specifically, but it's it's a point. They said no to forced return to office mandates. They said no. Once again, make it make sense. There were some arbitrary changes in performance evaluations. This is right to endorse. They wanted to add a new field or collect some extra information or something, and it was like, why? You're just putting more pressure on people for something, and you employ people to do a job. Is this helping evaluate people's jobs abilities? No, it wasn't. So it didn't make sense. They also use the right to propose in a very nice way from the perspective of burnout in tech is quite a large thing. I was actually looking at some research the other day where 20% of all people that work in the Netherlands in their working ages will at one point experience some form of burnout. So it's quite large. But in the tech industry, there is a quite high incidence rate. They force them to make a proposal to try and look at how we can fix that problem, right? Burnout doesn't come always from people that are just trying to do too many things. It can also come from pressure. So the big question is what will you do for your Works Council in Adyen? What are the things that you'd like in the business that you'd like to keep the same? What are the things that you would think would make Adyen a better company? That's the big question. But before we get there, I have to also bring the bad news, right? I can't just say it's all rosy pictures. You're going to face some obstacles. This is just the nature of how it is, right? We're going to experience some FUDs, FUDS, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. What's a FUD? A FUD is something that, either you give yourself good old imposter syndrome, right? I'm not qualified. I don't have time. I won't make a difference. And in the worst case scenario, FUDs are given to people. Many years ago, before I moved to the Netherlands, a manager gave me a FUD. Why are you leaving the company now? You've got so much more room to grow in this particular company. Your career is just going to falter and stall. It wasn't the case, right? But yeah, FUDs are self-imposed. FUDs can also be given, and that's not generally very nice. So the best important thing here to do is to recognize them. So let's go through them. I don't have time. Classic. Absolute classic. I have too much work on my plate. The good news is, in theory, you get to spend as much time as you need on Works Council activities. I say in theory because it's very important in a Works Council to say, I need this time to go and work on these things. When you're on a Works Council, it's not like you have to do more work, right? You now have two hats. You have your normal day job hat, and you have your Works Council hat. You have a certain amount of contracted working hours. It gets split between those things as much as it needs to be. This is protected in the sense of you can have no like negative repercussions. Salespeople have sales targets. This is the easiest thing to kind of reference. Their sales targets need to go down that are relative and proportionate to the Works Council work. It is generally something that you have to fight for. It's just a misunderstanding in a lot of businesses. They go, oh, that Works Council thing, it doesn't take time. It takes time. You have to tell people. But hey, look, you do have time. You have to set the boundary. That's true. But you get, in theory, as much time as you need to do the work that you need to do for the Works Council. A lot of companies mandate this and say you're going to spend 25% of your week doing this work. Some companies, it changes. Another FUD is I'm not qualified. Good news. No one's qualified. You're getting elected from people in the business, people that are, they don't always have a background in management. They don't have a background in project management often. They're not leaders of the business generally. The leaders of the business go, oh, why would I do this thing? I have my manager. Yeah. They're allowed to be in the Works Council. They just don't join. I don't get it personally. But so yeah, people aren't always activists. They aren't always organizers. Not saying that you need to be. So this is why you have mandated training. You get I think 5 mandated training days per year. I think you get to have more if you can justify it. It's not particularly hard to justify these things. But it can be anything that helps you perform the duties of your Works Council. This could be Works Council 101s. It could be how to build a business case. It could be team building. It could be how to run an effective meeting. It's like soft skills. It could be hard skills. It could be anything you need. I don't know what the hard skill would be on Works Councils. But yeah, like my personal experience here was you are interacting with people on the C-level. And like, I'm not qualified is one of those funny things because, once again, very personal opinion, C-level people are hired to be always looking for the future. They need to be able to not think about today, but think about 6 months from now. And an example here is I don't know the human resource officer that's working in Adyen personally, but some people may make the assumption that the chief human resources officer is the most people person that's ever existed. It's just not the truth. It doesn't have to be the truth. There might be, right? I don't know them personally, but they need to be the person that's very good at seeing what happens in HR in 6 months. That's a very different skill than being the most personable person. Might still be a lovely person, who knows? In a Works Council, you're very often dealing with the day-to-day. You're very much dealing with the now. And my experience is that sometimes C-level people just forget that there is a now. I mean, that's their job, is about focusing on the future, trying to get from where they are here to the future, sure, but you are a part of the now. You are here of what's going on, what's live in the business. You have arguably more qualification to know what the business is doing now than what a C-level person has. It's a hot take, and I will run that take to my grave. Hopefully not need to. Another FUD, I won't make a difference. Well, you know what? If you never do anything, then you're probably not going to achieve anything for your colleagues. It's as simple as that. I can't really say too much as like, when you try, you would be surprised at how many things you can achieve. There's a famous saying in Dutch, which is nee heb je, ja kun je krijgen, which means you have a no, but you can get a yes. It's amazing how often just asking the question actually solves things. I won't make a difference. Maybe you can. So from here, I'm going to give it back to Kit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Because, there's now basically just one thing left, which is, are you going to put yourself forward to join your Works Council? Whether you can do that depends on whether you're eligible to run. And for the situation at Adyen, from what I understand, you are eligible to run for your Works Council if you have been directly employed at Adyen for at least the last 3 months. So if you joined on or before the beginning of January 2026 this year. So if you meet that criterion, then you can run in this Works Council election. Okay, some important dates. Applications are open now, and they will remain open until Friday the 17th of April, which is this Friday at the end of the day, so that's pretty soon. If all is well, you have received a link or a form or something through which you can submit your application. Your task, if you want to run for this in this election, just answer the questions, submit it, send it in, and then you put yourself forward. So after Friday, after the nominations close, then there'll be a check to confirm that everyone who submitted is in fact eligible. And then voting will start on Tuesday, the 21st of April, so next Tuesday. The voting period will remain open for about 3 weeks. And then the election results will be known around the middle of May on the 13th of May. So here's all of that in a convenient timeline. So again, the applications are open now until Friday, so just 2 more days. And then when you got this voting period, one thing you can do, so after the next Tuesday, is campaign to ensure that you indeed get elected. Now, this campaigning, it may sound a bit big. It doesn't have to be a big deal at all. Basically, you just tell your friends or your teammates, hey, I'm running in this election. Are you going to vote for me? And then ask them to ask their friends if they're going to vote for you. And that's as simple as what your campaign can look like. If you want to approach it a bit bigger or more systematically, realize that there's not one, but there's 17 open positions. So you can also group together with a couple of people, maybe people you already know who say, we are campaigning together on these and these points, which we find important, and vote for us or vote for anyone in this group. So that's also an option as well. So that's the timeline. Which brings me to the final message. Again, you can join your Works Council. Worst case scenario, you run and you just have an experience you can tell people about. You learn a lot. Best thing, you actually get elected, and that puts you in the position to make a real difference for yourself and your co-workers at Adyen. So put yourself forward after the session today, and in any case before Friday, and then you can jump into this adventure. And with that, this was the presentation part of the info session. If you have any questions, this is the moment you can ask them. You can throw them in the chat if you're comfortable. Then we'll respond to them directly. You can also write to tech workers, and maybe Ben, you can throw this in the chat because last time my messages didn't show up. Or I can try again.
Yeah,
thank you.
now. Yeah.
Yes. So if there's any question, I am Max. So Max, you asked, how does representation work in practice, meaning being proxy between management and employees from your experience? So I'm going to pass it on to you because you've got the experience here.
I was a bad representative. I will say that outright. The company where I was working in a Works Council, I won't name names. You can look through my LinkedIn history if you want. But the management in some cases just doesn't like you talking to people because I don't know what it is. to be honest. I think it's a level of like, hey, look, we want to go this way. I'm trying to remove as many blockers as I can.
Mm.
I think one of the worst things, that was probably one of the worst things I did, was just not talk to more people.
Mm.
And that is something that I think I would be very much easier doing now. I think in Adyen, you will be on a much, much better foot from the beginning when you have these discussions and you go, how do I represent people?
Mm.
And I think that's a very important conversation that people should just have from day one. Um, how does representation work in practice is like, what I mean to say is as well is, you get sometimes, so in the worst case scenario, you're dealing with layoffs. And those can be really tricky because if a business is thinking, we want to do a restructure, we want to have like the ability to like change some roles here. You don't necessarily want to go and tell people. And it's not because you want to try and protect them or anything. It's more because sometimes telling people information that's not final just scares people and makes them very, I don't know, just makes them not want to be around. And that is fine to some extent, but I just don't think it's very good. I mean, it's from the idea of like for the proper functioning of the business. So instead of necessarily saying, "Hey, we're doing layoffs or restructuring," you kind of more do questions to people. Hey, what do you think of the structure of the business now? What do you like about the business? What do you think we should do differently in the business? How would you see Adyen in a couple of years, just even from an individual perspective? What would you like to see in Adyen? Because that's when you can start getting more information from people. I think in a lot of sense, especially in the tech world and especially being international, there's a lot of people of different backgrounds and different cultures. And I think what kind of naturally happens is you get like little clusters of people that are kind of together in businesses. And sometimes you have people that are very like apart from different people. And I think one of the better things to do is to actually like bring that community, is to talk to as many people as you can and get as many opinions as you can. I was talking to some people from another company last night, and there's a training company called New Council, I should mention. They're very lovely people. They provide training to works councils. They organize once a quarter. They organize these sessions where a whole bunch of works councils to get together. And they had a session last night, and I was lucky enough allowed to go. And yeah, that was one of the questions from people, which was, I was talking to one of the people, and they were actually doing active sessions of finding people in small groups and talking to them and saying, what do you think about how we're going as a business? And it was actually getting direct feedback from people. I've been told that open walk-in sessions never work. What do you want to call them? Like Spreker? I don't know what the English version of that one is.
Yeah, office hours.
Office hours, yeah. Apparently they don't work. We always wanted to try it, but I just never got around to doing it in my works council. But yeah, it's being the proxy between management and employees. At the end of the day, you also need to remember that you're also defining policy. You're not always going to be defining or helping individuals. There are some protections you provide to individuals, specifically around the case of discrimination. But in general, you're always talking about policy. So when you are talking to people, you will hear a lot of very personal issues, like my manager is doing X. And you might think, well, it's a personal issue, I can ignore it. All personal issues actually generally are systemic. So actually listening to people and talking to people about, hey, why did this happen? How do you see this particular position? Asking a lot of questions and getting as much information as you can might lead you towards a systemic problem. And that's a skill. It's a skill that I wish I had a lot more of, and I wish I had when I was on a works council. But yeah, it's a very long
No, it's really good. And I think also provide some way for people to contact you, like either just an email address or a phone number, or like an emergency button if I have something I want to discuss with the works council. So yeah, you mentioned like the office hours don't work. I think what could happen is that you get a lot of office hours where nobody shows up, but then if somebody shows up, that can be really useful.
Exactly.
So yeah, one thing you could do is just block time when you're working on works council stuff, but then have that double as an office hour or something. So if someone comes in,
I always had this dream of just like putting myself into a meeting room, putting on the window, works council office hours, and just continuing to do my work. Right?
Exactly, because you'll be
Show up.
spending that work anyway, and if someone
Yeah.
shows up, it's relevant.
Yeah.
And another
It
thing,
was.
if there's, oh, sorry.
Oh no, Karen, I've got
Yeah,
a.
no. Sorry, I'm just brainstorming like on the question.
Yeah.
But one thing, if there is a couple of topical issues that you and the other people on the works council are considering, you could also do like monthly thematic sessions that in 1 month you say, okay, now let's talk about pay transparency. What do you think about that?
Yep.
What do you think about the rules of how many days you have to be in the office? And then bring that topic to people's attention, advertise it, just make it a company event. Maybe outside of company premises. I don't know.
Nah, you can do it onside
Yeah. Okay.
company time.
Okay.
It's fine. Like the thing is, it's not
Yeah,
like
it can be. Yeah, this is one of your privileges. All of the talking to workers can be done under your work hours and their work hours too. So you don't have to do this outside of work hours.
oh no. I would thoroughly encourage against never doing anything outside of
Yeah,
hours for works council.
exactly.
There's a meetup that was last night. Maybe that's an exception. You get free food. And
Yes,
we came away with a goodie bag, which I thought was cool.
very
Like,
nice.
it's always people that have works councils that are hosting them. It's just a very gezellig atmosphere.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I hope that gives you some inspiration.
Yeah.
If you want to brainstorm or discuss this further, just send an email or reach out in some other way.
If you have other more questions as well, please feel free to throw
Yeah.
them. Like, there's no burden of time. I should mention, by the way, both Kit and I are not associated with Adyen directly.
Nope.
We do this for the fun. We don't gain anything out of this except for other people being better represented, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. We are all
Weird hobby.
volunteers. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought also this time around, Kit, I don't know if it's very relevant, but
Mm.
I did prepare some other like stuff of things that people
Yeah, sure.
like.
People
It's
are
just
still around.
yeah, like part of me is like I kind of want to talk about them, and then there's like some reference material if anyone ever comes back, and it's like, hey, like I want to know the answer to that thing.
It's
Oh
quite a lot. Maybe just pick two or something.
yeah,
Um,
I think one of the biggest one that people worry about a lot is if I have a works council, are layoffs more likely to happen?
mm,
And that's one of those classic ones of no.
mm,
The just because you have it like okay in the Netherlands, if you're going to do layoffs, which is more than 20 people in 3 months from memory, it has to go through an official process, and it requires the works council to be consulted, or to be advised or request for advice, I think. And from what I understand, there's no specific need from Adyen to do any of these sorts of things. I think they're just realizing finally that they need to do this. But yeah, it doesn't make it more likely. It doesn't make it less likely. It wouldn't surprise me if there was some restructure at some point in time, which should have in theory gone through a works council. But since no one technically got laid off from it, there was no need to go through a workers council directly.
mm.
But it's more specifically of it doesn't really matter if the works council is there or not. It would have happened if it needed to or not. Yeah. Kit, was there any one of these other questions that you go, hey, that's kind of fun to have on a recording?
I'm browsing.
Yeah.
Maybe the final one. The company made a change, and I think it should have gone through the works council. What should I do?
Yeah. This is surprisingly, it happens even if you have a works council. Now, you have 28 days. The clock starts ticking from the point that you are aware of the change. What I mean to say is, if the company says we're going to go and make some arbitrary change in the end of year reviews, funnily enough, there was a company who the HR sent out, here's the new process, and the works council the next day sent an email out to all staff. You can ignore the email from HR.
Wow.
And it was a very big company, and it's a company that you know of, and I will tell you what it was afterwards, Kit, but I will not share the gossip.
Wow.
It's called nullification. And what a works council does is they say, we do not agree that this did not come through us. Now, when I said 28 days, you have 28 days. And what I mean to say is it could have happened a year ago. There's no changing. You can use your right to propose to go and change things. But unfortunately, if it happened more than 28 days ago, there's nothing you can do. Well, I mean, nothing. You can do the right to propose, right?
Yeah.
But there is a statute of limitations, and the whole idea is for the proper functioning of a business, right? There's like a statute of limitations as to when you can make the change and when you can't make the change.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in generally in sense, these things don't happen very often. If they were to happen very often, there would be way more noise about these things. But yeah, big company. Funny. I actually heard it from someone who had just joined said company, and they were like, "Oh, our works council appears to be very active."
Fantastic. Yeah.
Good time.
You can be an active works council as well if you want to.
Good.
Okay.
I think that wraps it up then.
Yes. So, great job joining this session. Put yourself forward. You got until Friday.
Enjoy, and yeah, if you ever need to reach out, hey, at
All right, wait. We have another question. Edge case. What if something was adopted before the Works Council was in place? Well,
this is like one of the hardest ones, right? Because there are some things that are like protected. It's like pay transparency rules are going to be a big thing soon. And some of these things have to go through works councils. Yeah, it's tricky. I'm not qualified to give you a valid answer. I can tell you that. I can tell you that the people at New Council are qualified. But when you're on a works council and you say, hey, like, I don't know if this is right. Part of the job is actually finding people that know the answers, and being well connected to people that have a lot of training and a lot of history is like really important. And it's not, it doesn't have to be hard. And what I mean to say is like, it doesn't have to be that you're making cold calls to people on telephones. It can just be an email to a company. A lot of works councils have relationships with training organizations, and they say, hey, if you ever need help, just reach out, and you just flick them an email and you say, hey, we're kind of lost. What should we do here? And people, like the training organizers, a lot of the people that have training companies for works councils, they started the companies for training because they realized how misinformed a lot of works council people were. So they, like, what I mean to say is all the training companies come from a very, very positive place of people that really want to help people. So like at the end of the day, it's on the works council to make sure they reach out. And that's the hardest thing, is to convince people we need to ask someone. And it sounds like I'm making a big thing here. It's not really. It's just, hey, yeah, we need to get the answer to this. But yeah. Cool. We'll leave it at that. Emails, techworkers.nl if you want to come and join us. We have one small condition, which you cannot have direct hiring and firing powers. This means writing contracts and ending contracts. We want to make a safe space for people to collaborate. And it's very hard to get people to collaborate if they are under threat of their jobs. Apart from that, it's a very open atmosphere. People from a lot of different companies just trying to figure out how we as a tech industry can have make a better world, I guess. That sounds very cheesy. I'm sorry.
All
right.
Perfect. Have a great evening, everyone.
Great evening. Ciao.
Bye.